also to say my name is Vajra Devi, for those of you that I haven't met or haven't seen for a while. Yeah, so for the last maybe 2.5, 3 years, I've been reading the Anguttara Nikaya, which I think is the largest of the Pali collections of Pali suttas. It's about 1,600 pages long, and there's several hundred pages of footnotes. And within that, there's a lot of repetition, but I wanted to read the Buddha's words. But within it, there are some suttas that are a lot of suttas completely new to me, and some that I've come across before, but it was great to come across again. And I want to talk this morning about a bit about the Cetana Sutta, which I had come across before, but it's right at the end of the Anguttara Nikaya, which I finished reading just a few days ago. So Cetana is a word that it means something like will or volition. And in some ways, this sutta is talking about a quality of energy that's helpful to the practice. So it's right in the ballpark of where we're looking at as an attitude to the kind of energy that we're using or effort that we're using. But actually, it's really mainly talking about conditionality, positive conditionality, that dependent upon certain conditions, certain causes, something will arise, something will come into being. And when those conditions change, that thing disappears, something else comes into being. And in the sutta, it's talking about a particular starting point, the starting point of ethics, of moral life. And it says, independence of ethics, freedom from remorse arises. And then I think the next stage is independence on a mind that's free from regret or remorse. Then joy arises. So there's a whole set, and I'm sure it will be familiar to many of you. Progresses all the way through the positive nidanas, from ethics right up to knowledge and vision of things as they are. And this progression in the Cetana Sutta is just made in a particular kind of way. So without hope and wishing and wanting that things would be a particular way, without wanting something in particular to be so, in particular looking for the next sort of link in the chain. But also without forcing, without willing, and without willfulness. So basically, without craving or aversion. That's what you've got when craving and aversion are in abeyance. Or they're able to be, they're not in the mind that's aware. That's how I would talk about it. Then there's a natural unfolding to a positive, in a positive direction. So there are different translations, and I found it interesting to look at the different translations. So I've got three. So Bhikkhu Thanissaro, he says there is no need for an act of will. This unfolding, that's how he talks about there is no need for an act of will. Bhikkhu Bodhi, who actually translated the Anguttara Nikaya, and I think he's translated several of the other Nikayas. He says no volition need be exerted. So there isn't a sort of exertion, or will is not exerted. And then Devan, one of our own scholars in Triratna, he says it is not necessary to be willful. So the language is simpler, but it's also quite experiential. It is not necessary to be willful. So the sutta goes on to say, after these things, it's no need for an act of will, or it's not necessarily to be willful. The sutta goes on to say it is natural that this next quality follows on. Bhikkhu Thanissaro says it is in the nature of things that, for example, that rapture arises in a joyful person, that these follow quite naturally. So this is we know this, but in some ways we don't know it, in the sense that we don't necessarily live it, setting up positive conditions and allowing the results to come for themselves. Having that faith or confidence that positive results follow from setting up conditions rather than seeking out or sort of trying to will into being these positive results. So the sutta is kind of saying that all that's necessary is that we give a direction to the mind, an underlying positive thrust. So in the moment, if our ethical life is pure, or we're paying attention to our ethical life, then positive results follow. And even though the sutta is quite sort of clear about the which results follow, I think you could also say that we don't know exactly how or when or how they will manifest, what kind of positive results come from being with positive conditions, positive states. But there's an underlying truth to this that we can take in a bit more deeply. So when we're practicing mindfulness and mindfulness with a right view perspective, with a Dharma perspective, then we are setting up those positive conditions. We're setting up conditions that are consistent with the Dharma unfolding in a positive way. So as well as this, I think we're also in this, with this sutta, highlighting an impersonal quality of effort or energy. We're sort of letting nature do its work, if you like, and letting awareness and right view do their own work of bringing about skillful, beautiful qualities into the mind without needing to try and get somewhere. We set up conditions in the moment to be aware and to notice what unfolds. And I think that noticing is important, actually, and I've been pointing to it the last couple of sessions. I'm really noticing, particularly at the end of the practice, what's happened within the body and mind during the practice. Notice manifestations of positive emotion, of integration, of wisdom, and more awareness. Okay.